This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, just back from the dentist. Surprisingly, not too much wrong. I mean, I need one filling and either a root canal or a tooth being pulled and have no gum disease whatsoever. So to celebrate, I'm smoking a big fat cigar and eat some jelly baby. I just watched today, what's it called? Your Friends and Neighbours, following on from the recommendation when we were talking about In the Company of Men. God, these names don't exactly roll off the tongue. Yeah, I like this movie a lot. He certainly likes to live in the shadow realm of genres, in the same way that In the Company of Men, like we talked about, was almost an anti-rom-com. This is like, not to say an anti-romance movie, but it lives in the shadow underbelly of even something like Joe Swanberg movies, or movies starring Greta Gerwig with Noah Baumbach, and it's one with Ben Stiller, isn't there, with they star in. And there's Your Sister and Lynn Shelton movies. This is the underbelly, shadow realm of those type of movies. It's really if someone pulled the humor and not that there's not humor in this movie, but the good-natured humor and the sexiness of relationships with other people. And I know in certain shows, affairs and lusting after people it's very much fetishized almost and romanticized and portrayed very sexually on TV a lot of times, and even in movies. But in this, it's just a very pitiful look at relationships and unhappy people. I just really like the waters this guy Neil LaFoot, or whatever his name is. I like the waters he lurks in. I don't think that's what I was meant to say before I lost my train of thought while trying to pronounce his name. But yeah, it's actually, it's cool to see this back to back with In the Company of Men, because there's a lot to pull from both of them, and certain performances and his directorial style that he has obtained, at least in these films. I haven't seen the Wickerman movie or some of the movies that you talked about. Was it Nurse Betty? I haven't seen any of those, so I can only take my information on these movies. He's got a great eye for character and the dark soul of people, doesn't he? Where the hell has this Jason Patric been? First of all, I read, and I don't know if it's true, but Jason Patric used his salary from Speed 2 to fund this movie. So he must have been like, fuck that, fuck Speed 2, I want to make some art. And he's really good in this movie. The only other movie I ever liked him in was Knack, but I'm not sure now if I liked his performance or was it the movie that I liked. But he's good in this. Like, the opening shot of the movie opens with him, like, really aggressively, you presume, having sex, and no, he's recording himself and going through a kind of scene maybe that he'll enact out later, or that he enacts out in his head. It's really disturbing. And that character is something you really don't see on screen very often. And it reminds me of, did you ever meet a psychopath? And I'm not sure if you can call this guy a psychopath, but did you ever meet someone who just seems like they're an interaction away from going to jail? They just seem wrong in every interaction, and every way you see them, there's a dynamite lit to their head of wrongness, and you can't for the life of you work out how this person hasn't gone to fucking jail yet. But yes, the people who he surrounds himself with, and maybe the job he has, makes him I don't know if a productive word of society is the word, but maybe an accepted member of society is the word. And that's this Jason Patric character. He has an evil energy. Now, I know both of us don't believe in evil, but he certainly can portray a certain type of energy on screen, and he really does that well. He's probably one of the most unsettling characters in this type of genre. Not that you can completely navigate what genre this is, because again, it's a black comedy. But I feel like this one is less of a black comedy than In the Company of Men. And it really pulls back the self-loathing and unhappiness and despair of relationships that lead people to having affairs. And even when people leave relationships, like I've been married, I've been cheated on, I've been divorced. God, that makes me sound like I've lived a hell of a life, and I'm just talking about the one fucking person. But like, this movie is a lot more accurate to how it feels and how it is than a kind of Suits TV show type look at things. I know that's the genre anyway, but I've never seen something quite depicted in the depressing nature that relationships can be, and how people can be in this, and how things come about. The lens that this guy is looking through, these characters, and how he shows these scenes is really good, and it's very unsettling, quite creepy at times. Like the Ben Stiller character in this, like you mentioned when we were talking about In the Company of Men, that he's fresh off the set of There's Something About Mary, and he looks like it as well. Well, obviously because it's Ben Stiller at that age. But he just plays it well enough, and it's just tweaked enough where you don't like Ben Stiller in this. And Ben Stiller's persona in a lot of his movies is unlikable, but there's so much humor around his unlikableness that you end up liking him, if that makes sense. And you end up somehow rooting for the character. Even though Ben Stiller often plays what should be unlikable characters, but it's like what we were talking about, what we accept from a romantic comedy, in the sense, well, yeah, that's what sets up the comedy. So of course I'm going to accept that fucked up conceit. It's kind of like that. In this, he's devoid of that Ben Stiller formula and that Ben Stiller shtick. So when he's going about doing what he's doing, it's quite pathetic. Like, even how he propositioned his friend's wife. I can't remember her name. I think she was in Heat. I think she was in some lawyer show as well. Can't remember her name, but in how he propositions her, and he just goes over to her and he says, I want to see you. And just how shocked she is and how she eventually goes along with it. And it's very awkward. It shows the kind of awkwardness of affairs as well, in a way that I haven't seen before. And a cool thing about this movie as well is when the Ben Stiller character does have an affair with this woman, can't remember her name. In fact, I don't think they give the characters' names until the end credits, but I don't remember the actress's name. But their sexual exploits end in a dud because he can't get his dick up. And I think the Aaron Eckhart character has a similar problem. And there's a lot of times in this movie where characters ask, is it me or is it them? I think that's a tread line, like where they think the problems come from other people, whereas there's something wrong within themselves that they need to fix. I think that's a very clever theme and a very clever central question of this movie that's in the background, but always there. Like, for instance, a lot of these relationships seems to have problems that they're putting on the other spouse, whereas they're just very unhappy people. And I like as well that how this movie shows sexual incompatibility, which is something that isn't really shown in movies very often as well. All these couples seem to be sexually incompatible. And you kind of wonder, does the relationship's problems come or stem from their sexual incompatibility, or is it because their relationships have problems that they're now sexually incompatible? It's a very, very cool thing to throw into I'm hesitant to even call this a romance, but to be called into a relationship drama. And as the movie goes on, it's shown that when you look for answers in other people, you end up more unhappy. And all the characters that have affairs in this movie, like, including the Christine Keener character, they all seem to have similar problems with the relationships that they have outside of their marriage. And the only person who doesn't seem to think it's him is the psycho Jason Patrick's character, who is saying, well, it can't be me, and it's got to be you. And he does some nasty things in this movie, man. Like, when he's talking about how they basically gang rape the fucking guy, like in high school, where he just casually drops that out. Like, I've heard some guys say some weird things, but he really nails that scene, doesn't he? Where it's just, and so does Eckhart, and so does Ben Stiller, actually, because their confusion, if that is real or if he's pulling their leg, really adds to the confusion of the acceptance of someone like this in society, because they don't really think it's true, but at the same time they're absolutely fucking appalled. And then the great little director work and actor work in that scene as well, where they they slowly kind of shift awkwardly and kind of like, I think it's in a sauna or something when he's saying that. And they slowly kind of like cover their private parts and whatnot. But it's just very subtly shifting in the seat. It's a very good scene. Aaron Eckhart is brilliant in this. I'm really getting on the Aaron Eckhart train retrospectively, because in the movie In the Company of Men, he's playing a complete, confident machine, smooth, can never be got at type of character. In this, he's severely lacking in confidence. He's severely unsure, but he's still projecting that false confidence in his persona while also projecting insecurity. It's a very good performance. And again, I guess it's the tweak on the Aaron Eckhart persona in the same way that The Dark Knight is, where he's a good guy who's the pinnacle of justice from the opposite side of Batman. And in this, it's a tweak on his character. I mean, the actor's persona, in the way that, what if Aaron Eckhart's confidence was fake? And that's a really interesting lens to view his performance through and to take on as a character. And even how he's quite emasculated even in his response when he finds out his wife had an affair, and how he deals with it. He ignores it. You're so convinced that you know that Aaron Eckhart persona that he wouldn't do that, but in this movie, when he just ignores it for a bit, he's so playing against his usual type. Even in Manhunt, the one we saw the other day, he's chewing on chewing, going real attitude, ready to go. What does that guy say in Point Break? Young, dumb, and full of cum. That's like the Aaron Eckhart persona. And in this, even he doesn't even punch the Ben Stiller character when he finds out that he's had an affair with his wife. He just sits there. And that's a great scene as well, because Ben Stiller's character is, I think he's a college teacher, and he teaches Shakespeare, and he's just sitting there in costume ridiculously while he's having a conversation with Aaron Eckhart about having an affair. And that's something like in a TV show like Extras, where Ricky Gervais would, as subtle as he is, make it seem ridiculous and almost surreal. And then this is surreal in a different way, because it's played so straight, and not even with the Ricky Gervais kind of, yeah, we know this is ridiculous, but we've arranged the circumstances, so we're going to play it out like this anyway, so you can realize it's ridiculous. In this, you can almost zone out and forget he's in this ridiculous wig, but then you zone back in and you're thinking, God, they're having this conversation where he's in full costume. Like, very... I found that comedic, and I'm not sure even if I was meant to, because it just played at such a perfect pitch that you don't even know if it's meant to be funny or if it's just you're finding it funny and it's not meant to be inherently funny, which is the genius of that scene, I think. And the ending as well sums up the lostness of people trying to find something in other people, because Aaron Eckhart's wife eventually ends up in the bed of psycho Jason Patric, and she wants someone to hold her, and he is like, just, not to say forcing himself on her, but he just wants to fuck her, and he's the opposite completely to everything she would want. And in a way, her husband is very much who she would want, you would think, but because she's unhappy in herself with something she hasn't addressed, I guess. Like, every character is an enigma in this film to an extent, but that scene perfectly personifies what this movie is. And it's a very strong, depressing way to end this film. I don't know. I can't remember which other movies by this guy you've recommended, or that's where the train ends and he switches to something completely different. But I'm very glad I've seen two of these movies. Something completely different in terms of character studies and character dramas. But yeah, be interesting to hear your thoughts as well.
So, yeah, based on what I've seen in terms of reviews and scores online and whatnot, it does look like perhaps the train ends here in terms of his best work anyway. I remember when these two movies came out and they were very, very, very acclaimed. Now that might not have translated to ongoing popularity with general audiences or whatever, but in terms of just how critics rated them at the time, there was a lot of buzz, and that seems to have fallen away over the course of his career, sort of film by film. Of course, that doesn't say everything, and I think sometimes with directors like this, there's an element of, well, you've already seen it, you've kind of got the shock factor over with, and seeing him kind of revisit this same sort of cynical material over and over again, there might be like an exhaustion factor to it. I'm only speculating because I haven't seen the films, but I wonder if there are just things in the same way that his work, you would imagine it's very challenging for a lot of people, going back and back and back and over again to his work as he kind of changes as a person and everything. That could prove challenging for people. So I will definitely investigate further for sure. But for what it's worth, a lot of the people who were really loving In the Company of Men and Your Friends and Neighbours went on to not particularly like his later work. The other thing to say is that after Your Friends and Neighbours, he started sort of flip-flopping back and forth between doing films like his first two, that he's originated the whole idea, he's come up with the characters, the whole scenario, everything is just an extension of his playwriting, which seems to be the sweet spot of where you would want to find him. I think on the strength of these two movies, you would identify him as someone who's not like an amazing director, but is rather someone who has a really specific and interesting worldview, and just sort of watching him comment on and discuss different characters and archetypes and stuff from the ground up, all the way from originating the scripts to the way he chooses to have scenes play out as a director. That's what you want from him. And yeah, obviously we've seen directors who've kind of transcended what initially made them popular or the initial appeal, but I don't really see anything in these first two movies that makes me go, I want to see this guy direct movies no matter what genre it is, no matter who wrote the script. Quite the opposite, really. I think that the idea of seeing him direct some random action adventure movie like Jungle Cruise or something that he's had nothing to do with the script, and the project doesn't seem to have anything really to do with his interests, that has basically no appeal to me whatsoever. Maybe a morbid curiosity to just see a mismatch of director and script, but yeah, I think that's something that definitely emerges. In fact, the next film directly after Your Friends and Neighbours is the first appearance of that, and that's Nurse Betty, which I think is like co-written by two other people, but he's not involved in the script. Now, after one or two movies doing that, he then makes another film, which is him writing it, and I don't actually know what whether or not these films that we're watching were originally plays, and then he's then adapted the play or if they were originally conceived as films. I'm not sure how that breaks down, but I think the one directly after, well, the next one that he's written and directed after Your Friends and Neighbors is called The Shape of Things or something. It stars Paul Rudd and what's her name, Rachel Weisz. So that's supposed to be pretty decent. I'll definitely be checking that out. And then I suppose I'll just keep on venturing forward, probably focusing on the films that he's written and directed, and hopefully just keep on getting gems like this. But I wouldn't be surprised if the quality does start to decline. Now, I, like you, loved this film. I might not have loved it as much as you because I felt it was just a little step down from In the Company of Men. In some ways, it's a step up in terms of it has moments like that confessional scene, Jason Patric in the sauna, that pretty much topped anything in The Company of Men. But although the highs are maybe higher, I think the overall package is just more perfectly precise and engineered and clear and crystal in The Company of Men than it is in Your Friends and Neighbors. So in watching them in that kind of 1-2 punch way, I felt that Your Friends and Neighbors wasn't as good. Now, still brilliant. Still really, really liked it. Just to kind of touch upon some of the points that you've raised there. I think, as you said, Jason Patric is phenomenal. I was also trying to run back in my head of what he's been good in. And I came to the same thought process of, is he good in Narc? Or is it just that Narc is a pretty decent movie and that's inherently unusual for Jason Patric to be in? Although Lost Boys is a pretty decent movie, but he does not bring much to the table in that. I actually haven't seen Speed 2, funnily enough. I say funnily enough because I adored the first one, but I've never been a big sequel guy. I rarely watch a movie because I love the first entry into the sequel. I kind of need people to say that the sequel is good, but being that there are only 2 Speed movies, and they are obviously in the same universe, Sandra Bullock being in both of them, maybe I'll give it a look. I have always heard that he was kind of a big step down from Keanu in terms of charisma, and yeah, whenever I've seen him over the years, I've just thought he's just a good-looking guy, and that's really all that he does. That's his whole job, kind of like early Brad Pitt. But he is absolutely phenomenal in Your Friends and Neighbors. I mean, if that was his first movie, just to kind of compare it to Eckhart in The Company of Men, if that was his first movie and that was his entrance onto the scene, he would literally have been, the people would have been queuing around the block to hire him for every project out there. It's almost a testament to how bad or how big of a flop Speed 2 was, that Your Friends and Neighbors didn't generate any real career buzz for him. It's kind of like he was so far in a deficit of buzz that even the absolutely incredible, it's not just that it's great acting, because, we see great acting all the time. It's like every year we see great acting. But with that kind of magnetism and that unique and that just a special flavor for cinema, to see that is like a 1 in a million kind of thing. And yeah, what an unlikely source it's come from. I wasn't aware of that point about him using the money he got from Speed 2 to fund the movie, but that just gives me so much respect from the idea that he's not only incredible in this movie, but he kind of made this movie, financially speaking. He, I guess would he have been the biggest star in the movie? I mean, Catherine Keener was pretty much a nobody. Amy Brennan or whatever she's called, pretty much a nobody. Ben Stiller, I don't know, kind of a nobody when he joined the movie. Obviously, he had made Cable Guy and Reality, but it's not like, certainly people wouldn't have known his name. Eckhart, pretty much a nobody. And am I forgetting someone? Natasha Kinski, is that her name? Maybe she would have been the most famous, but yeah, like I guess he was the one that had done a massive big blockbuster movie, albeit one of the most like hated ones ever. So you can imagine that his presence did bring quite a lot to the picture, to like, you know, getting it funded and whatnot. So, you know, in terms of like not A-lister, but, you know, Hollywood stars sort of throwing their weight behind an indie project that they believe in and getting it made. This is now going in my head, like filing away in my mental filing cabinet of like great instances of that happening. I think like what you were saying earlier about like how the film is sort of devoid of Ben Stiller shtick. I got to disagree on that front. I now like Ben Stiller quite a lot as a dramatic actor. I always liked him as a comedic actor. I think Something About Mary is a fantastic comedic performance. And I think, you know, I would say the same of Meet the Parents. I think as long as he's the straight man and not like doing a goofy character like he is in Zoolander or Tropic Thunder or Dodgeball, as long as he's the straight man, I think he's a brilliant comedic actor. But as a dramatic actor, I've generally struggled with him over the years. I think there's Noah Baumbach one where he plays like a guy kind of in a rut in his life who's sort of an aging rock star or something. Not rock star, but like an aging, used to be in bands and all of his friends have kind of like grown up and passed him by. It's an early Greta Gerwig performance in it. I think Rhys Ifans in it. I can't remember the name of the movie, but Greenberg, that's it. It's a good movie. And that was the first time I was like, okay, I this guy can actually act and he can turn down the shtick. This movie, I feel like he's noticeably hamming it up more than the other people in the movie. Now, I still think he's fine. I think he brings a lot of good to the movie. I think you're obviously supposed to find him really insufferable and up his own arse and like a really sort of conceited actor-y type. So a lot of that energy kind of harmonizes with the movie, but I do think he stands out a little bit as like the least realistic characterization in the movie. But yeah, anyway, someone's got to take that title, I suppose. What else? I think that the as you said, like, it's very rare to see a film that offers such a complex study of sexuality, not sexuality, but sexual interaction, sex, I suppose, as it's as to the layman. Like the sexual compatibility, sexual performance, sexual attraction, sexual fulfillment, basically looking at other people and try to find the answers in them, and generally doing that through the lens of sex, but also just I suppose it runs deeper than that, and sex is kind of like the language that they're using to discover that about each other, but it's almost like a crude tool for what they really need. It's a rare film where pretty much no one comes away completely likable. Maybe Natasha Kinski is the one that's the most likable. Certainly there are degrees of likability in the movie. I'm not trying to say that they were all just as bad as each other, but it's not a... I mean, I guess unlike In the Company of Men, there's no innocent victim really in this story. It's just a bunch of like shitty, broken people. And them, sort of trying to find the answers in each other. I think a lot of the time in the movie I was going, is this realistic that they would be friends with Jason Patric? Is it realistic that Amy Brennan would decide to have an affair with Ben Stiller, who she finds to be just annoying and shit? Like, and it all kind of is, in a way. But the most challenging one to kind of buy into is that these guys would continue to be friends with Jason Patric when he's just such a horrific monster of a person. But I think, as you said, we've all met people who are like, Jesus Christ, here, you really wake up every morning and just damage the world and the people in it, don't you? But those people will have friends. And sometimes you see them engaging in social activity. You look at the other people and you go, what are those other people seeing in this person? And it's, well, because once you kind of attach yourself to someone socially, then they get more leeway than if you just saw that. Let's say me and you, right? We're friends. I'm going to be able to do something or say something or have an opinion or do an act that you would tolerate at this point, and you wouldn't be like, fuck this guy, I'm writing him off. That if it was the only thing you knew about me, it was the very first thing that you encountered, would maybe be a deal breaker, and you'd be like, nah, I'm not even interested in this guy, like he seems like the idiot. I think that's kind of the insidious nature of these things within a friendship. You know, you're slowly peeling back layer after layer, and you're also, you know, becoming accustomed to all the things that you like about that person. And that's kind of, I mean, certainly Eckhart seems to, I wouldn't necessarily use the word idolize him, but he's very, Patrick is giving something to Eckhart that's very important to Eckhart, which is that connection to a sort of fully actualized person, someone who's like just completely taking life by the balls and just taking from it whatever he wants. And as you said, Eckhart is like in a more schlubby kind of, he's under the thumb of life in every regard. And also just to jump on that, I'm also very much now on the Eckhart train. Like you, I kind of never really, I mean, I always thought he was decent in the likes of Thank You for Smoking and Dark Knight and stuff. I guess I haven't really liked many of the films that he's been in that much. I like Dark Knight, but I never felt I liked that because of Eckhart. I mean, I didn't like that because of any of the actors in it, even though they're all really good. You know, I love all those actors, but it's kind of, it works because of Chris Nolan, really, and, you know, the cinematography and the score and all the rest of it. Eckhart has just been someone who I've always found to be like a really good, serviceable person. But first seeing it in The Company of Men, where he's absolutely astounding, and he's the Jason Patric of that movie, where you're like, holy shit, this guy's a fucking like tornado of some kind of energy. I don't know if I like it or not, but it's something to behold. And then directly, like a day or two later, watching him play like this kind of like overweight, boring loser kind of cuck character, and playing it so well, just so naturally, inhabiting that character to the point where, again, just like in The Company of Men, you're like, this must just be him. It's amazing to see. And I guess the sad thing is that, like, we might not actually get it. We might have to look long and hard to get any more Eckhart of this level. And again, I have heard that he's completely insufferable to work with, like, to the point of a hell of a lot of the people who work with him are like, never again. So it might, he's actually said himself in interview that he's missed out on a lot of roles because people know how horrible he is to work with. So, you know, it's already hard enough to get great parts in Hollywood, but if you compound it with that kind of approach to your career, then it makes it even harder. But yeah, really great performances. Pretty good movie. Love the vibe. I love, as you said, it's so rare to see movies this dark. I mean, yeah, obviously we hear all the time, like a new Spider-Man movie comes out. It's dark. This one's dark. New James Bond. It's dark though, and I know there's no attempt. I'm not trying to say that those films are attempting to be dark in the ways that these Neil LaBute films are dark and then failing. Of course not. It's mainly just a marketing thing, and then it's that kind of grim dark thing that Chris Nolan's brought into Hollywood and seems to have infected everything. But even if you look at like films made for adults, we don't really get this level of darkness. We get super harrowing, horrific stuff happening to good, decent people. That's not dark. That's just, there's nothing to grapple with there. It's just, it's bad luck and it's sad and it's unfortunate that X happened to Y person. But movies that are like, no way, some people are not great. Like they're really challenging and they're really problematic, and they're really the impact they're having on the world is really questionable. Let's study those people. Let's understand those people. Let's sit with them for 2 hours and watch them and hear what they have to say. And let's not even judge them. Let's not make it a story about like the innocent victim to that person, where at the end of the day, there's a big uplifting beat where the good person finally transcends their, subjugation that they've had for the whole movie under this monster. It's like, no. Let's actually just what it understands, or make some attempt to engage with and understand these really destructive people. I find that fascinating. And there's a handful of movies that I could think of, a small handful of movies that I could think of that are looking at that and discussing that. And I feel like there should be more. I'm not saying that I want to sit down and watch a movie like that every all night of the week, but it is very refreshing to have seen that on screen over the past week, these two films. Now I think the next one that I suggested that we look at, The Shape of Things, is even more obscure than these two. These two already have sort of fallen out of favour, and I can't imagine they're on any streaming service or anything. But The Shape of Things, I think, is a level below that, even in terms of its fame. I hadn't heard of it until I looked at IMDb the other day. But yeah, probably worth hunting down. Yeah, not much else to say about it. Very good film, and yeah, I wonder, would they make this film today?
Yeah, just to go back on one or two things that you said quickly there, quickly before I forget. I don't think Ben Stiller's doing shtick. I just don't think he's a good enough actor to do drama at this point in his career. I think that's what it is. I do agree he's a lesser actor than the others in this movie. Totally agree with you with that. And by the time Greenberg comes along, and I think, is it the Mirror Witch stories? It's very good as well at doing drama. And I agree very much with you that when he's the straight man in comedy, he's that's where his strength lies as a comedy. So I don't think he's doing any comedic stick in this movie. I just don't think he's up the par on the drama there. That's the distinction I would make, just to push back a little on that. And the other thing was absolutely with Jason Patric, man. Imagine if this was his primal fear. Obviously, it's not as Hollywood as primal fear, but the way Edward Norton was able to showcase just a tour de force level of performance. This isn't a tour de force in a Hollywood sense, but it's a tour de force in an indie movie. Have you seen this guy? Have you seen what this guy can do? Kind of thing. But it just so happens he did Speed 2 before this, which I was going to say we can watch that and talk about it. The wheels of the Jason Patric train would fall off just as quickly as the wheels on the fucking boat used in Speed 2 don't have any. But I looked. Ow! My cat just attacked me on the leg. She's not a fan of Speed 2 as well, probably. But I just looked and it just seems to be fucking bad across everyone, everywhere, all at once seems to fucking hate this movie. And not just that, it's 2 hours and 5 minutes. So I don't know, man. Like, maybe. And I've seen it at the time as a young teen. And even then I thought it fucking sucked. So it's debatable whether I want to go down that fucking, trying to think of a boat pun there, but I can't. Also, another bit of cool information is Your Friends and Neighbors is the first movie ever reviewed on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty cool and pretty much it signifies the changing over times when both these movies, In the Company of Men and what's it called? Your Friends and Neighbors. It's the names that don't help. They're basically almost impossible to find out there. You're probably better off looking in your fucking local charity shop than a streaming service to see them. Well, yeah, first one reviewed on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm gonna draw up Aaron Eckhart best movies list, and on the off chance there's ever a good Jason Patric performance out there other than this, and I'll get back to you, see if we've got something else. Just to come back with a final bit of Jason Patric facts that I just discovered. First of all, no one's doing the top 10 list of his best performances. Eckhart, you can find some, but if it doesn't have this movie, then I question the list. Jason Patric, his dad was the priest in The Exorcist, and his granddad was Jackie Gleason, the comedian. So he's from quite the showbiz family. Couldn't find anything really that would fill you with optimism that we're going to get a good Jason Patric performance ever again. But there's a movie I came across called Keyhole, which is, and I quote, an experimental gangster / haunted house film. So, and that got good ratings. He's the lead in that. I'm not saying we add that to our never-ending list of movies we may or may not get to in our lifetime, but yeah, Keyhole.
Yeah, intriguing premise there. I guess with Patrick, it's just going to be one of these things where we've seen this movie, so we know he actually has something special in him, but 99% of people who haven't seen this movie would just completely dismiss him. And it kind of makes you wonder how many actors out there have a hidden gem that actually like is so much better. I mean, we were talking about Ben Stiller and how he wasn't sort of quite ready for dramatic acting at this point. Again, he doesn't ruin the movie by any means, but he's the worst thing in it, mainly because everyone else is so good. But then when you get to Greenberg and the Meyerowitz Chronicles, whatever it's called, he's really good. I remember when Blind Side came out, and I thought, what's her name? Sandra Bullock did a really good job, and now she's good in Gravity and stuff. But these people who like have always kind of let you down. Same with Brad Pitt for many years, and then they come out with a performance and it's really good. If it's an A-list star, then they just, from here on out, they're probably going to be getting a lot of good parts. But if it's a person who's kind of like a failed star, or just like, I guess you couldn't be a character actor and just be consistently shit because you never would have gotten the parts in the first place. So Jason Patric is like a rare example. A good example would be someone like Chris O'Donnell, someone who like doesn't have the skills to be a character actor. So they were never going to be a character actor. Their thing that they were aiming for was being an A-list movie star, but they don't have the charisma or the talent for that. So they're kind of just going to disappear into obscurity, and that's Jason Patric. They're the type of people where you can see them actually delivering a great performance, but it not really doing much for their career, because what's Patric going to springboard into from this movie? That like part doesn't really exist. Not really. Like, where do you go? It's not. He's not going to be hired into like Philip Seymour Hoffman type like character actor, fourth on the billing type role. He's not going to springboard into A-list star from this because he's already proven that he can't do that. So yeah, it's a rare case of someone being able to deliver a great performance but then just like it not really doing anything for their career, or at least of someone who's already notably not particularly compelling as a star or an actor or anything really. But yeah, there must be others out there. Anyway, I think I'll put Speed 2 on the back burner. You've already seen it, so I definitely don't think you need to go back again, but I might watch it at some point. The Shape of Things, though, does intrigue me. I'll see if I can find that.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.